So yes, we have our next speaker is our keynote speaker. His name is Peter Musa Reedus. As I said earlier, Peter Musa Reedus has had an extensive career as a creative director, a producer, an artistic director, a music director, a composer, and he's a champion of intercultural dialogues. And it's even more in the context of what is going on today. And so that's from my part. In 2003, Peter founded Cultural Infusion. So it's a global social enterprise that works with schools, youth, digital media, and the arts to promote cultural harmony for a more cohesive and richer society. Cultural Infusion delivers programs in India, Brazil, South Africa, Egypt, Cambodia, and throughout Australia. Please welcome to Peter, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much. Are you able to switch the camera on? Thank you. Give me video access.
Henry?
Yeah, my video has been stopped. Thank you. I think that's... So Henry, hello. Can you hear me, everyone?
Yes.
We can, yes.
But we cannot see you.
We can't see you
yet. It says here my video has been stopped by the host. So someone needs to provide me some access.
Henry, are you there? Can you hear us?
Let me call Henry very quickly.
Peter, sorry, just give us a quick second.
No, take your time. I still think we have a few minutes. If we want, we can probably give everyone a few minutes break and then come back. I'm happy with that too.
Well, we'll see how it goes. I just want to also, to Sonia and Douglas, welcome as well.
Peter, s'il te plaît, pour sa vidéo. À Peter, Cultural Infusion.
That's me, yes.
Some of the technical challenges when we, and really welcome to Rudy as well. So some technical challenges when we doing something new, we will get there.
Merci. Il a toujours pas la vidéo.
Okay, here I am, everyone. Thank you.
C'est bon. Merci, Henri. Super. À tout à l'heure.
Okay. Well, hi everyone. My name is Peter Musa Reedus, and I'm here. It's 8 o'clock, and I'm in Melbourne, Australia. And I'm very honoured and humbled to be in the presence of every single one of you and everyone who's listening out there in the World Wide Web. This, for me, you know. How could I explain it? I suppose it's a very, very... Can you all still see me? Because I've just changed screens just to look at some notes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so for me, it's a very significant time. Why? Because, yesterday marked the 75th anniversary of the end of World War II. And of course, today is also Europe Day. Which is a day to celebrate peace and unity. And on that note, I'd like to offer just a few moments silence for all of us, to offer a few moments silence for all those who aren't in the position that we're in, for those who are in a less fortunate position, and those who are experiencing dislocation, and those who are being affected by this virus. So just a few moments silence. Thanks. Okay, so thank you very much for observing those moments of silence. I initially commenced my studies as someone who had an interest in Koine Greek, which was the language that came about as a result of Alexander's expansion into South Asia. And I was interested in becoming a theologian, but music got the better of me. So Israel, listening to you today has been very moving because I share a lot of interest in common with you. I went off and studied Western classical music, and then went to Europe and spent 4 years studying in Italy, what was then called Czechoslovakia before it split into the Czech Republic and the Slovakian Republic, and did a short stint in the US for 6 months. So all up about a bit over 4 years. During this period, I always felt my own heritage was being denied. I was always curious about the music of other cultures and why they weren't given an equal voice, a voice similar or standing similar to that of Western classical music. Because there were classical music traditions out there that predated Western classical music by hundreds of years, and in some cases, thousands of years. If you went to ancient Chinese classical music or Byzantine classical music, there were traditions out there which weren't being given an equal voice. And I suppose in one way, that was...
Μπράβο. Τρέλανε μας πάλι. Τρέλανε μας πάλι. Το έχεις κάνει ήδη με 2 τέλεια εσύ. Αν το και τρίτη και τελείως.
Γιατί θέλω να μαθαίνεις πράγματα.
Dimitri,
Thanks.
Dimitri, if you can go on mute.
Can someone... Yeah, thank you very much. Okay, so I wanted to start an organization that would not only conserve those intangible traditions, but find ways to revitalize those traditions. And that's how I suppose I gave birth to the organization I founded, which was actually in 2002, Cultural Infusion. And the idea was, how could we find ways to discover the other, to give an equal voice to the other? Because through doing that, what would happen is we'd begin to reinforce the self and discover ourselves. And this is what I found with forming this organization, Cultural Infusion. But more importantly, I also began to realize that Cultural Infusion was a way of being able to create that lived experience. And this was very important as a way of being able to counter ethnic and race-based discrimination, because the drivers of ethnic and race-based discrimination are mainly fear and ignorance. And the way to counter fear and ignorance is through collaboration and familiarization. So that's why education is important. That's why the arts is very important, which is one of the pillars of the Changemakers Lab. Because in the arts, you can create a safe haven to explore all sorts of issues. You know, we know the power of music, the power of seeing, you know, the artistic project with the birds that you highlighted at the beginning of today, Vasily, are all quite moving. Anyway, I wanted to share my screen now, so I'm just going to share my screen and show some of the work that I've been involved in over the years, and then I'm going to begin to talk about the structure that I set up, which is basically a fusion of profit and non-profit coming together. I'm just going to share my screen. Okay, can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. Okay then. So
Yes.
yeah, good. Thank you very much. I'm just going to start the slideshow from this current slide. I might start first of all by just telling you a little bit about my heritage, both my my grandparents on my father's side came from Asia Minor in 1923 after the Asia Minor catastrophe. And my grandfather, who used to love visiting people, had a different name at the time, but was given the name Musafiri, which means the visitor or the traveler. And that's because he used to love traveling and visiting. And that's the story behind my name. And every name has a story behind it. What's interesting is I find myself, up until COVID, I was spending between 4 and 5 months of the year traveling. These are just some images of, I'm going to quickly go through some of these images of some of the programs that we've been running into schools. So through our organisation, Cultural Infusion, the Discovering Diversity program is delivered now to more than 350,000 students across Australia. And it's the most expansive program of its type in the world, and it's the most successful. And children love it. Children who have never ever have experienced an Aboriginal person or someone from Zimbabwe or someone from China or a Mongolian singer really begin to be in close contact and experience that person and begin to discover that they have a lot in common. One of the jobs that I started to do after my career as a conductor was I was invited to direct opening and closing ceremonies. And I found myself working on a lot of big events with the Dalai Lama, with Indigenous people. And I began to realize that we don't all see the world through the same way, but we can find values and we can find themes that we can begin to celebrate together and share stories. And here is a story, a creative dance piece that I produced for the UN welcome ceremony 10 years ago. And it told the story that, once upon a time, the earth was, all the continents were connected, and to remind us that all human beings are connected in some way or another. And we told that through this creative piece. Here's some other images of some stories. Occasionally, I would take the liberty to conduct. I would put lots of different orchestras together and ensembles together. And quite often, we found ourselves working with refugees. But I want you to think of today versus maybe 30 years ago, and how today, the importance of having skills that allow you to relate to the other are more important than ever. Why? Because the world's becoming increasingly globalized. To think prior to 1989, we had no World Wide Web. So all of a sudden, we've gone from having the World Wide Web to being exposed to information and cultures from all over the world. So the ability to be able to have those and navigate your way through how other people see the world has become more important than ever. So for us, artistic productions were a way of being able to celebrate that, to discover that, and to send people on a journey so they could begin to go on their own discovery, so they could discover the other. Because through discovering the other, like I said earlier on, you begin to discover yourself. One year for our Australia Day concerts, I produced 9 Australia Day concerts for our government here. And they had casts of anywhere from 150 up to sometimes 1,500 people. And we told the story of bovine creatures, cows and bulls, and how in some parts of the world are considered sacred animals. In other parts of the world, we told myths associated with them. We told the story of the Minotaur and how the Minotaur came about. We told the stories of how in South Asia, cows are considered sacred animals. And in the West, sometimes they're considered just mere walking hamburgers. Here are just some other images of some of the other productions we've produced. And lastly, here's a production, my last Australia Day concert that I produced in 2012. And we told the stories of what's in your suitcase. And we were able to celebrate diversity through many different cultures coming together and telling their stories about a suitcase, or maybe they didn't have a suitcase. But this is just a diagram which explains earlier on the importance of intercultural dialogue in transforming racism into empathy. And it just reiterates earlier what I said, which is the drivers of racism are ignorance and fear, and the counter drivers are familiarization and collaboration. And the importance for education, exchange, dialogue, which is what all of you are already doing in an incredible way. Just moving on, I'm now going to talk about the traditional sectors that we're all familiar with. The first sector is the not-for-profit sector. And basically, not-for-profit basically means that if there is a profit at the very end, it can't be distributed to the shareholders unless there's an agreement. But generally speaking, not-for-profit entities are very mission-driven. They're socially driven. You have the government sector or the public sector, as it's referred to in some parts of the world. And the last sector here is the private sector, the profit sector. Now, when I formed Cultural Infusion, way before that, I was doing a lot of thinking about what type of structure I wanted to form. Because a lot of people were saying to me, well, maybe you need to be a not-for-profit, or maybe you need to be a profit. But what I found through the profit structure was, even though I was considered a social enterprise, which was, well, we can't really stovepipe by definition what we mean by social enterprises, but I think what we can say is that they have a common objective to build human capacity, to build social capacity. So, in Australia, they're recognised, and in some cases, they can access some levels of funding. But generally speaking, you can't access levels of funding. So where I wanted to engage in professional development, where I wanted with my organisation to access regional and remote communities, it was impossible to do because it wasn't viable to run those within a profit framework. So what I needed to do was set up a not-for-profit entity, which would allow me to access public funds and then have the overarching mission of the organisation that both the profit and the not-for-profit structures could feed into. And this took a lot of work, and it required, it was an arduous task of being able to understand these different sectors and also the different accountability connected with those sectors. But today across the world, there is no real fourth sector. The fourth sector is sort of a combination of both those. And this is something that I've been trying to advocate for over the last 15 years. So here we have just a diagram again. There's three different sectors: the public sector, the social sector, and the private sector. But the private sector is also the social sector today. We're seeing that more and more, and a lot of the social sector organisations also behave in a profit way because they're aiming to make profits, which they keep in their organisations to then distribute. But wouldn't it be great if we were able to form a different type of organisation that could be recognised by government, that could be a fusion of the profit and the not-for-profit? And I might come to that a little bit later. So I coined the phrase actually back in 1998, more than 22 years ago, a hybrid social enterprise, and people thought I was crazy. What are you talking about? I mean, there's no such thing. I said, well, it's just a theoretical concept that I have, that I operate in this middle space over here, or that's where we all need to be operating, or here, in this case here, a combination of a profit and the private sector and the not-for-profit. But wouldn't it be great if this entity here could be recognized by governments across the world? And that's been a sort of a sideline project of mine. I'd like to sort of, reinvigorate it. And now that I've met you, Vasily, and thank you so much for inviting me to be part of this forum today, Vasily. I think it's wonderful work that you're doing. Something we could probably take to, intergovernmental organizations across the world to start to think about what this new entity would look like. But I'm showing you this other graph here because I'm gonna move my conversation somewhere else, and I know I only have a few minutes left. But there's we talk about the social. Whenever governments do planning, they think of social planning, environmental planning, and economic planning. So we have got the public sector, the social private sector, which I've already talked about. I'm just going to move on very quickly. Sorry, I've got a whole lot of other graphs. I might just go through these very, very quickly so you can just get a feel. We've got the social, economic, and environmental, but our organisation really works in this area of culture. And I believe culture is overarching, it's underpinning. It really is what defines humanity. And according to UNESCO, culture is a driver for sustainability, for key to quality education. Culture can also be a driver for innovation. Culture can be a driver for reducing poverty. It's a mighty force. That's what culture is. So why aren't we focusing our societies on culture? Why aren't we doing more to create a pillar based on culture? Why do I say that? Because I genuinely believe that if we really want to have social impact, we need to have cultural impact first. Every society has a culture, a way of thinking, a way of behaving, and if you really want to create change, well, social change is embedded within or within culture. At the end of the day, within a culture of a society. So because we have this overarching culture, and this is where I think we need to work towards. But I want to move now. If we were to type the word culture into Google, you'd quickly find or intercultural understanding. You'll find that intercultural understanding excuse me. And what we mean by intercultural understanding is a two-way process where we all take something away from engaging in dialogue with the view of creating something new. But when I started to, Google culture, I began to find these other terms, and I found that cultural conflict had 244 million results. This is back in 2014, I think. So the statistics have changed quite a bit. According to the United Nations and UNESCO, 75% of all the conflict that we have in the world has a cultural dimension. So why aren't we doing more? Why aren't we investing more in culture? According to the Global Peace Index, they believe that something like 13% of the world's GDP is spent on dealing with conflict. So if you were to look at that in terms of numbers, it's something like about 13-14 trillion dollars is spent of the global GDP dealing with the cost of violence and conflict every year. According to the UN, 75% of that has a cultural dimension. So why aren't we developing a pillar around culture? And so I've said culture is a mighty force. I've talked about culture as an enabler and driver for sustainable development, an eradicator of poverty, key to quality education, a key to social cohesion and inclusion, a driver of innovation. Why aren't we looking as a culture as sitting at the center of everything? Why aren't we looking at culture as being almost everything? Because if we can do that, then we may be able to create the societies we want to create. So what I started to do a few years ago, I started to coin the phrase cultural enterprise rather than social enterprise. The difference being, in this case, for our organization is how do we use market forces to motivate behavioral change? Look, I still had a few more slides and I know I've run out of time, but I'm just going to probably end on this slogan, which I developed for the UN campaign a few years ago called Diversified We Grow. And I'm just going to play it from the beginning.
Every person, every culture is a sum of human experience. Our history has shown that progress is possible through interaction and cooperation. Working together in an interconnected and intercultural age is the next frontier of our new and exciting world. Multiracial, multi-ethnic, multifaceted, multi-talented, multicultural. We must acknowledge the value of each unique culture by engaging, exciting, and enticing the next generation through intercultural understanding in communities, in the arts, in the media, in business, and in education. Greatness was not achieved by any one culture. Greatness was born of the human experience. Divided we fall, united we stand, diversified we grow.
Okay, and that brings my presentation to the end. Thank you.
Peter, thank you very much for that incredible presentation. Like every time you were talking, I was like, that is awesome. I want to talk about that. So, but I think I'll say that culture in terms of values and themes for a shared story to be able to see the world differently. And I think in context of asking you to join us, this is exactly the reason that, as a social entrepreneur, as you called it, a hybrid social enterprise, I think the speakers that are going to be following now is all people that are driven purpose driven, and have got the cultural aspect to it as well, and want to have impact in society. So it's definitely the sweet spot in the presentation that you made with those different circles. I think the speakers in this panel, this is what it's about. It's about the social economy, and I mean, people may not see it as a social economy, but it's about impact, social impact. Let's call them entrepreneurs. But I love the pillar of culture and the importance of that. It's absolutely phenomenal. And the last point is, even it was Israel or Jalal saying we need a center to bring people together, and this is where we can learn from one another culture. And as we've seen Israel with all the amazing Greek music. So thank you very much. It was an amazing presentation, and we look forward to continued discussions later on.
Thank you very much, Vasily. And once again, it's an honor, and it's humbling to be part of the discussion today on this very, very important day, a day that stands for peace and unity.
Thank you. It's an honor to have you. Thank you very much, Peter. So, Arthur.
Excuse me, Peter, before we end up, we have a question from Daphne, who is asking, where are you from Cultural Infusion? And I'm not sure what that means. I'm sorry. Maybe
yes,
she's okay.
I'm the CEO and the founder of Cultural Infusion. Were there any other particular questions or anything specific in mind that she had? We're based in Melbourne, Australia, and we run programs across Australia. And now we're only running programs in Tanzania and in Pakistan. So once we've developed the programs, we usually move into different areas. And that's our Living Culture program, as a way of being able to use culture as a way of creating sustainable pathways for people, especially youth in developing communities, and as a way of them being able to be connected with their own heritage and developing a sense of pride in who they are.
Okay, thank you very much, Peter, and thank you, Daphne, for this question.
Peter, it will be great if we can have on you after if you can also join us as part of the panel, and if questions do come through. So please, if you can stay, it will be great. I know it's getting late there, but yeah.
I'm here to stay here. I'm going to stay as long as I can. I might just come and go after the panel, but yeah, it's completely fine. I'm enjoying this, and I'm enjoying listening to all the views that have been presented.
Awesome. Cool. Arthur?
Sure. Okay, then we would like to welcome, please, Christos Les Reedus, and we have also Sonia Nenzik and Douglas Herman, who are our next speaker / panelist. So guys, thank you for joining us for this event and for participating in our summit. Really appreciate, and we appreciate. And I think I will let Christos introduce himself first, because he has been connected for quite a long time. So we will go with Christos, and then we could interact with Sonia and Douglas. So that's for you, Christos. Thank you.
Once again, allow me to thank you for your kind invitation to today's summit, to Changemakers Summit of 2020, the Europe Day today. Let me comment that these are very interesting and challenging times we are living in. And so far I have heard very insightful points on how we can deal with these not just upcoming challenges, but challenges that we face already. And we struggle to adjust to the new realities. But first of all, allow me to introduce my association. As I might have already said, I represent the Greek form of refugees. I work as a communication officer in the association. And this is an association of refugee and migrant communities based on Athens that has been established in 2010, but it has it has actually started to work on the field since 2007. It's an association consisted of refugees, migrants, but also individuals that work in the association and are willing to contribute with their knowledge and their skills. What this association does is community empowerment. Basically, since we are consisted of refugee and migrant communities, we try to raise their voice through our association, and we are giving them space to advocate on their own and on themselves. We just, step back a little bit and we kindly push them in front to step up for themselves and advocate for themselves for their rights and their obligations. This is something I have to say new that we face in the public sphere. The fact that refugees are able to address both their rights and obligations. We are, during the last 5 years, we constantly listen, and now I'm referring to more the Greek audience. We constantly listen that refugees are only people that have rights and do not have obligations. This is not this is not entirely the truth. And I've heard many refugees wishing to contribute to the public space by taking part in city councils, in committees, in every aspect of the daily local life. I have seen their concern, and I also share the concern that Israel expressed earlier in the summit, where he said that he doesn't want to see himself as a passive, beneficiary of assistance, of help. He wants to contribute, and he wants to show that he's able to perceive reality in his own way, and not just as a beneficiary. I'm really glad that I heard this argument, because this is something that we strongly support in our association. This is the reason why we try to network in local, in national, in European and international level, not just with the refugees themselves, but also with the institutions. Technically, we work as the mediator between refugee communities and the institutions that make decisions. So our ultimate purpose is to include refugees in these procedures, to raise their voice, to listen to their voice, because we do actually support the idea that refugees can be the part of the solution, not just the problem. And this is something that we need to highlight, and I think it has been already highlighted through this summit. It has been 100% clear that we are ready to include the people in the decision making. And I'm very glad that I'm taking part in a panel where I can see refugees addressing their, the issues that concern them and this population, and they are able to address it in such a great level. Well, we can see that there is a number of people that have talents and have skills, and we need to promote actually these people. We need to convince them to stand in front and to tell their story and to share their experience and their expertise. I have to tell you that not every refugee wishes to step back and to extend his hand and ask for assistance. There is also people like Israel, and I'm very happy that I met him. Met him. I'm very happy that I keep seeing people having this crave to step in front and to talk and to raise their voice and to say, okay, we're not just passive receivers of help and assistance. We wish to contribute to your society, and this is also our society now. And one reason why I'm both proud and optimistic hearing, Israel singing Greek songs is, well, I'm proud because I keep in mind that my country has showed and expressed solidarity in very difficult and dark times for Europe, and and my country has standed for European core values. By the way, this is what we celebrate today. We celebrate we celebrate Europe. We celebrate the European core values under which we united Europe. So solidarity was one of the solid things that pushed us to this union. And second, this is the very foundation of of social development, of social of how we will establish the grounds to to make this country even more progressive. I understand that we are living in very difficult times where we either see the glass half full or half empty. But this is a choice we need to make. And I think this is something that drive us, all of us today, to take part in this conversation, the crave of making an impact to our society and to change something that seems to prevail, xenophobia or racism or any negative sentiment that escorts refugees and migrants issues. Well, right now I understand that this is a puzzle with missing pieces, and we really need multiple initiatives at the same time by every relevant stakeholder. Europe is also a puzzle with different aspects and realities. We have people that want refugees. We have people that do not want refugees. We also have, our organizations, our associations. Sorry.
Sorry, go ahead. It was a mic that was open. Go ahead. Sorry, okay. Christos, just if you can wrap it up. So we want to go into the discussion of the panel. So
I will wrap it up. Yeah, for sure. Just to sum up right now, we need to reestablish the public discourse. We need to start from the very beginning, and we need to understand every party that takes part in this discourse. It's first of all, it's the local perception that we need to understand. If we stay to the perspective, to the argument that every person that has a question to raise is a fascist, then I'm pretty sure that we have lost the main idea. If we stay to the perception that the Greek state does not want refugees, or they want them, and if we try to simplify a more complicated question, I think we have lost it again. What we need to do right now is to reestablish the public discourse by uniting every different aspect of the public sphere. We need to engage with the local society, because right now these are the people that we need to convince that not every refugee is a criminal, and not every refugee is a kind person which is willing to step back and listen to you. we need to understand that refugees are, people with emotions. And it's the same thing with the local people. Local people are also people with emotions. Everyone is very emotional in the moment, and we have to be very rational in our judgment, and we have to be very rational, and we have to be just. We have to understand the different realities that are in conflict right now. So I know how this is going to be heard, but I do believe that coronavirus was actually a problem solver. It actually operated as a, as a time changer, because we were at the bridge of a very difficult crisis, and I do know as a fact that something really changed. It's been 2 years we were discussing about Lesvos getting the Nobel Prize, and right now we are talking about fascism, increasing in Lesvos. I do believe that the truth is somewhere in the middle, and this is why we need to reestablish the public discourse, and we have to, it's an opportunity that it's been given to us right now to connect different aspects of reality, and to once again to promote dialogue. This is the key to every conflict. So I don't want to take more of the time. I once again thank you very much for the kind invitation. I always remain at your disposal, and my association is always open to dialogue, and we are always open to show different aspects of reality. It's not black and white. It's we have to be pragmatic in this. It's not a crisis. It's a challenge. We have to face it as a challenge if we are to to make a change and to make an impact to society. Thank you very much once again.
Thank you very much, Christos, for that overview. It was incredible, very inspiring. Thank you. And I think it'll open up, set a good platform for the discussions. And there's always two sides, and it's important for us to realize that. So, and so for the next panel, and I just want to quickly share some points briefly before Sonia and Douglas go ahead, because they've been in the heart of many things. And these are two inspiring entrepreneurs, well, not entrepreneurs, sorry, people that left everything and moved to Lesvos to empower asylum seekers, have made Lesvos their home, and have come under a lot of fire. And I think there's going to be a lot of debate possibly between Douglas and I. So before we go into that, and this is what it's about, different opinions. But I do want to say the one thing about the public discourse, Christos, that you mentioned is, I think in 2015, people are stuck with those numbers in their minds. And I think it's important actually to put it on a slide. And I didn't have the opportunity, just didn't put it together, but just want to give you quick numbers for Greece. And for those who are watching, in Greece in 2015, Arthur, sorry, can you mute, please? Thank you. So in 2015, there was 856,000 people that came into Greece in 2015, 856,000. The following year was 173,000 in 2016. 2017, 30,000. 2018, 32,000. 2019, 60,000. Christos, to your point, we don't have a refugee crisis. And I understand that in Turkey there's 4 million people that are there as well, but from Greece has got about 150,000. But from a European perspective, it's these numbers. Germany alone has taken 1 million and showed incredible solidarity. So we need to change the misunderstanding that people have to raise better awareness. And specifically on Lesvos, 20,000 people. We're losing. We in discourse about European values over, and Lesvos being a hotspot for 20,000 people. Now, 25,000 for Lesvos context is huge for Lesvos, but in the context of Europe, it's nothing. And I want to highlight just one last point before Douglas and Sonia speak, is that, and then Arthur makes the introduction, 66% of the population of the refugee asylum seekers on Lesvos is women and children. 66% women and children. 70% of those children are under 12 years old. So people really have the wrong perception. And it's important that we find ways to better inform one another, understanding people's fears, and not, as you mentioned, Christo, this thing of this person's a fascist, this one is this, because people have got their fears and concerns about, they're concerned about their own futures that they feel is being pulled under the carpet from them. So, which is disorientating them with a lack of solutions based on fear that the rest of Europe doesn't want anyone, because every time they hear about Lesvos, they don't hear about the Rudies, the Israels, the Jalals, the Lubnas, and Parwanas and the like. You know, so we need to raise better awareness. So I just wanted to mention that part. So Arthur, over to you, if you can make an introduction to our next inspiring guests, and I'm holding my breath to see how it goes.
Okay, well, thank you. I'm activating my video. Thank you for this insight, Christophe. And before I jump on our next speakers, I would like to say we had a question from Daphne, who asked to provide, it was a question for Christophe, but actually the question was, could you please give us a brief overview of the current situation in Greece? And I think that Vasily has answered it in a way. So I hope it was great for you, Daphne. And if it was not, please tell us, and we will ask Christos to respond to it. Okay, for the next panel, actually, before I'm introducing our next speakers, I would like to retell one more time the panel's main theme, which is showcasing existing solutions that have been created on the island on Lesvos following the refugee crisis, as to illustrate the solutions and to highlight the solidarity demonstrated on a day-to-day basis. Please, yes, that's basically it. So for our next speakers, I would like to introduce Sonia Nenzik and Douglas Herman, and also to let us know that Rodi has joined us, and he will have the talk after Sonia's and Douglas presentation or opinions. Okay, actually for Sonia and Douglas, I'm going to say that they are the founders of Refocus Media Lab. Please, Sonia and Douglas, introduce yourself and welcome to our summit, and we are very pleased to have you today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having us. And starting this discussion, actually not starting, because we organizations working on Lesvos are trying to be part of the solution for a longer time. And we're happy that Daphne is bringing all of us together to discuss what can be done and how we can work together. And we truly believe that this is what we really need at this moment on Lesvos, in Greece, and Europe as a whole. But starting from the beginning, maybe some history, as we've been asked to present our organization as part of those existing solutions right now on Lesvos. So we both, I think, started this journey, or maybe even a speed run towards humanitarian aid and building Refocus around 2016. We both worked on several projects. Doug was a photographer, journalist, and teacher working in the States. I was working in politics almost my whole life, actually, for the European Parliament and for different politicians, and at some point had a change of heart. Started working at the Serbian-Hungarian border when the crisis hit very, very heavily. And this is where Doug was doing his journalistic project. And we met there. And since that point, we worked on several different projects in several different places that brought us to Lesvos. I mean, actually, right now after Serbia, like Lesvos was our next, Athens, and then Lesvos was our next project. Then we went around to several different places where refugee crisis or refugee challenge, as Christos said, was happening. And we did the circle and came back to Lesvos. Why did we came back to Lesvos? First of all, we realized that there are certain gaps in humanitarian aid that we would like to try to tackle. The gap was in education, and not just any education, because if there is any education in humanitarian aid, it's usually education for little children, usually age 5 to 12, where children learn basics. There's almost nothing for teenagers except for language skills. And there's absolutely nothing for young adults, people in their 20s, who maybe did not get great education, maybe lost years of education because of war in their country, because of persecution, because of long journey to Europe. And at some point, they will have to start living in new societies, new countries in Europe that are highly demanding when it comes to skills, when it comes to your position on the labor market. So we, after seeing what is happening with people whom we were working with so far, so let's say people in Serbia, refugees from Afghanistan, from Syria, from Iraq that we met there, and we saw their journey to Europe, to different countries, where when they were still allowed to cross farther. In our view, their life was not that much better. Yes, their life was definitely safer, but the new reality when it comes to securing their living, supporting their families, was not great, because they did not have skills that they could work with in Germany, in France, in Italy. So we decided to focus on skills that we could give them, that they can actually work on very fast to catch up on education, or just to change their path so far. We did it also because we met so many highly ambitious individuals on our way, and it was so clear and at the same time so sad to us that they will not be able to return to education ever, because if we're talking about boys who left Syria when they were maybe 15, maybe 16, they barely touched some high school education, and now they spent several years in Turkey very often. They managed to cross to Lesvos. They stayed on Lesvos for a while, then they stayed on mainland Greece, and then suddenly they're 20. They cannot go back, they cannot catch up on the whole high school. When we speak about the ones who actually got a high school diploma and would like to continue their journey in education and go to universities, it is also highly unlikely because of all the requirements they have to fulfill and also support themselves while studying. The global average for enrollment to universities or any higher education institution is 37%, but for refugees, it's only 3%. So this is how unlikely it is that they will be able to actually catch up with their education and get skills that will allow them to support themselves and their families. When we did some of our projects in several places like Morocco, like Bangladesh, it showed us that, first of all, Lesvos is the place to be, because refugees will always come to this place. And they were staying at that point when we started programming on Lesvos, they were staying longer and longer on Lesvos. And it was obvious that they have to do something with this time. They have to work on their future. Living inside Moria camp is absolutely dreadful and should not happen, should not take place in Europe. But if you already have to stay there because you're waiting for your asylum decision, you have to force yourself and use this time to do something for your future. Bangladesh also showed us that this so-called refugee crisis in Europe is absolutely solvable, that our crisis is more of a political crisis than a crisis of the scale, because Bangladesh suddenly got almost like 900,000 Rohingya refugees within 3-4 months. Suddenly, a very poor country. We were talking about European Union, united organization that brings help support about wealthiest countries in the world, basically, that can actually support each other, that can have systems that can work. Very, very short. I know I spoke a lot, but Doug will just tell you about our system and what we actually do.
Yeah, so Sonia touched, thank you, Vasily, for having us again, and for Peter from Cultural Infusion, and Christos and Rudy. It's a pleasure to be on the panel with all of you. Sonia did say a lot about our motivations. For me, from a perspective of being a teacher and a journalist, my goal had in 2016, the first time I came to Lesvos, was to bring this situation into the classrooms in America to educate people, to do a lot of what Cultural Infusion is talking about, which is to break down these stereotypes and to get people to engage with the people living the situation, not just seeing what they see in a flash 2.5-minute piece on the news. We wanted them to meet the real people, and we wanted them to see themselves in the experience. And then after a year of bringing this into the classrooms and teaching, it became very clear that nothing was really changing on the ground for the people that we were engaging with. So what would happen if we brought the classroom into the crisis area? So basically the program that Refocus is modeled off of is something that we were successfully building in America for youth and for young media creators to have the ability to go to university with high level skills, or to go right into the workplace and to develop into independent careers as media creators, or just take those modern communication skills and apply them to any career path that they chose. And that's really what we're doing on Lesvos now. And we're giving young people an opportunity to develop something for their futures. And basically, we talk to our students all the time about how they have to look at Lesvos as the university that they are forced to attend, that this is a chance for them. And one of our students, Yasir, put it best. He said that even in the most challenging times, it's an opportunity for you to better yourself. And this ended up going on to a CNN My Freedom project just a couple of months ago. And it really inspired a ton of people globally to say that if this young boy and if these young people can deal with this, can endure this situation and still come out better for it, then that we need to support them somehow. We need to continue to engage and expand the programming to ensure that they have something to give other than unskilled labor in the next couple of years of their lives.
Thank you very much, Doug and Sonia. Your work is extremely inspiring, and the skills of the future that you guys are providing, and the hope that you're giving to everyone. So, can I ask you, do you see yourself as a social enterprise? And was that so when you guys came, is that how you decided? What made you actually decide to stay on Lesvos? So did you, from a social enterprise, you see yourself as a social enterprise?
Absolutely. The program that I referenced that was back in Philadelphia, it started out, it became a career and technical education program that focused on media creation skills, photography, video, web design, graphic design, live streaming, events. And before we even became a funded CTE program, we had a successful social enterprise and business where our young media creators that we trained were being hired by the Philadelphia International Airport or major partners in the city. City Hall was coming to us for media creation skills and projects. And this was an opportunity for them to build not only a personal portfolio of work, but also the experience that is necessary of how to deal with a client, how to present yourself professionally, how to actually advance your skills by actively working on real life projects, not just this theoretical experience in the classroom. And we wanted to take the same thing and bring it to Lesvos, and not just for asylum seekers, but for locals. We know that the island of Lesvos and Greece in general has been whacked for a long time now by economic downturn. And there are plenty of young people on the island who don't have the same opportunities that you have in other parts of the world. And they deserve the same opportunity. Technology is now in a place where tools are more available, connection is better than it has ever been. There really aren't any excuses as to why people in this situation or living on Lesvos cannot engage with media creators and with institutions anywhere in the world. The borders are not really there geographically and physically they're there, but technologically they don't exist. And currently the projects that our students are working on are proving that. They're collaborating with editors in New York City and London and Germany and Berlin every day. Still more.
So as an absolute global organization, with global experience, I want to ask the question, and for viewers, and we've got Peter here as well, that we're saying there's a convergence and now the middle between non-profit, for-profit, public sector organizations. These organizations as social enterprises are what people would deem as NGOs, and especially on Lesvos. And so the situation and the impression that has been created about NGOs. So what is your feeling about that? What is your thoughts around that? Because, I mean, just for the viewers that are not watching, there's this perception that's, and I want to give some, I'd like to present some insights, thoughts from my side, but I want to hear first your thoughts about that, because you know, and one of the panelists, we had invited someone else. We heard it from Siniparksi, but another one of the greatest success stories on Lesvos for me is Iliachtida. From 5 people in January 2015, they've got 300 people that are working there, about 300 people, youth, Greek youth, that are doing phenomenal and impactful work. They're looking after about 200 unaccompanied minors for housing, and many other projects that they've kickstarted as an organization, which is truly inspiring. Just them alone, one organization as a social enterprise. We've had people come from around the world, and we have the pleasure of listening to the two of you, both of you, that made a move to Lesvos permanently. And yet there's this, I want you to share your thoughts about the local perception and this mass challenge towards NGOs. So if you could share some thoughts on that and the why. Why do you think that is so? That's what I want to know, the why. You know, so more focus on the why, because we want, this is a constructive discussion, because we want to understand why. Why is this an issue? You know, and how can we solve it? How can we change it? So please, your thoughts.
I think the why, it connects to the fact that in the Venn diagram that Peter put up, that everyone's in these these silos. They're in their respective corners, and they're not spending enough time in the middle. And in the months leading up to the Corona outbreak, we were actively engaging in promoting that to change. We wanted people to meet in the center. We said, what would happen if you brought community leaders from the communities inside Moria, NGO leaders, political leaders, local leaders, people that are from Antifa movements that are basically showing solidarity with anyone, with all people on the island. What if you brought all of those people to the center and you actually helped them develop some sort of mission statement, a list of, so to speak, demands to the EU, to central government, to local government, to say, this is our way out. And our way out has to include everyone's voices. And if it's not going to include all voices, then there's no way out. Then we're just going to consistently kind of turn on ourselves and each other. And that the true enemy at the moment was misperception, misconception, an absence of dialogue. And if all of these people would just come to the center in a low stakes way, completely informal, not public, initially just have it behind closed doors, literally sit down and all have coffee and talk and hear each other and listen to each other and practice what we do in our classes about everyone has a story. Everyone has a lot below the surface that they don't present to the public regularly. That 85% of who we are as individuals and as organizations and as movements are not reaching the surface, because we're not necessarily bringing it to the surface. We have to own that to some degree as well, to say that we don't actually always bring up to the front of a conversation what people need to hear and can connect with. But what would happen if we literally just sat back and listened to everyone in a similar fashion to what now we must do through Zoom connections? What would it look like if it was face to face and everyone sat and and constructively listened to each other and then hear the similarities in the issues?
Leave the stereotypes behind the closed doors, because this is what we truly need on Lesvos. This dialogue cannot happen if we will not leave our pre-thoughts like behind, right? What I mean is that yes, we as NGOs have certain views on the situation. Locals have certain views on situation. Authorities have certain views on situation. And as one of you said, it's not like if you call, I think Christos, you said it, if you call all locals fascists, that's really unfair. Many NGOs believe that locals stopped helping, which is also not true. On the other hand, locals are calling NGOs human traffickers, where is extremely offending to us, as we put basically the savings of our lives to start our foundation, so did many other people who just want to work in the field, right? So just as you cannot say that all refugees are bad people, you cannot say that all people living on Lesvos are just fascists. We have to leave those stereotypes behind and just listen to each other. Come up with just 2-3 solutions. Do not discuss absolutely every single thing and not try to solve the whole refugee crisis at once. Just focus on 1, 2, 3 dimensions of it.
Thank you, Sonia. Peter, before I give the floor to you, I just have one question or statement. Yes. This misconception, so what is the misconception? Just to think about what is the misconception that the locals have? And then the question is, why should the locals make the effort to change, given that it's their island? So I'm just from a perspective of, someone's living in their home comfortably and happy and has got a massive influx of someone different and it's changed their home completely to what it used to be and what they were happy with, and it's now completely been transformed. The question is from the locals, why must I accept that? Why should I carry that burden? And why should I carry that burden for more than 5 years? Because it's been 5 years. There's 40% of the population in Mytilene is asylum seekers. And I often ask the question to anyone from across Europe that comes to Lesvos, I say, how many people has your city or your country got as a percentage of the locals? How many asylum seekers do you have in your country? Because all I'm saying is it's easy to point fingers, but are we really putting ourselves in the local shoes to really, really understand that their lives, their lives being turned complete, their home, what they called home and their comfort has been turned completely upside down? Have we given thought to that part? And then the question is, why must they make the effort to change the misconceptions, which I fully agree with that part. That's the key part. But, just also being from a view of putting ourselves in each other's shoes. But before you answer, I want Peter to make one statement, unless I'll let Peter decide if you can answer that now, some thoughts. Or Peter, because I saw your hand up, so maybe you can take both questions to Doug and Sonia. So you're on mute, Peter.
Yes, it might be a good idea to go back to Sonia. Sorry, and Sonia's colleague's name? Douglas. So Douglas. Maybe they should answer that, and I might continue on from your comment that you made in relation to the perception of NGOs and what we need to do to maybe change that. Thanks.
Okay. Sonia, Douglas?
Yeah, I think first off, the local Greek community in any of these small places should not be dealing with this alone. But that's part of the problem, is that their argument and their problem should be with the policy that forces them to be isolated this way. I think the reason why NGOs have come in here to do this work is because they see the need, and they can't, and these are good people who have come through to say we need to find a way to make an impact, specifically considering the context of today, to represent the ideals of this continent, to represent the ideals of modernity, to say that these individuals should have supports. And if those supports are not present, we will fill that void. That's why NGOs came in. And then the perception becomes that those NGOs have figured out a way to basically almost like gamify the situation and profit from it. And that's the misconception that we want to really break down, but that's not going to happen if there isn't engagement. Specifically to your point of like, why should the local community engage in the solutions? Because it's in their best interest. The geographical reality is that Lesvos has always been a crossing point. there has always been movement and migration through these islands into Central Europe. It is never going to stop. The policies that the current government will put in place to try to limit it or minimize it or cut it off completely or criminalize it will fade. This administration, this movement, at some point or another, if we take the longer view on this, they will not be in power forever. And while policies will change, the geographical reality of your distance, the proximity to Turkey, is going to mean that Lesvos will continue to be a potential melting pot for cross-culturalism and collaboration. Or it could become a strike point and a flashpoint for discord. And the local community needs to find a way to push for their best interests as well, and engage with people to have a positive outcome. They should push the central government, they should push the European governments to say, do not leave us here to fend for ourselves. It's unfair. And we've been saying that since we arrived in 2016. But at this current moment in time, throwing our hands up in the air on any side of the equation, throwing our hands up in the air and just complaining or shifting the conversation or the physical engagement to something that's not safe and it's not legal, or letting the individuals who are happy to do that have the loudest voice, that's dangerous, that's a problem. And right now, Lesvos' reputation's on the line. And the locals on the island need to reclaim the reputation that it once had, which was that of solidarity, which was that of representing European ideals. And it's fading. That's no longer what it's being seen as, because these loud voices have become the only voices, or they're just so loud that the other voices can't be heard. So we need this solidarity on the ground to become a groundswell that becomes so much louder and so much more cohesive that that small group of people who right now are dominating the conversation become more reflective and representative of their size. They have an outsized impact, outsized presence right now. And the local community has a need to support its own ideals. And I don't believe that this is the ideals of the community. I never have, and I never will. This is not the ideals of the lesbian community.
So thanks, Doug. I just want to comment again to say 20,000 people, 25,000 people is about 40% of the local population. So it's almost, for example, would you allow, and just give some context, would you allow a stranger in need into your home? You might allow them for a day, a month, whatever it is. So just from a context perspective, let's also understand from the local people, it's their home. So imagine someone comes into your home and is staying in your home. You thought you'd help them out for a week, a month, 2 months, and now the person's permanently in your home. And now no one's providing a solution. So I fully agree with you that the solution needs to come. It's not going to come from government. It's going to come from us. We need to, in our communities across Europe, be able to have these kind of dialogues and discussions and showcase and celebrate people such as Rudy, such as Israel, and our other speakers to raise the better awareness and show the solidarity to local people, especially to local people, because honestly speaking, the same local people that have been criticized for a long time, and many of them that are considered as friends, have been carrying the weight of European values, in my opinion, on Lesvos for 5 years, because they've got separate to everything that's changed over the last few years, economic crisis. They are carrying, they've got 40% of the population of asylum seekers, and with everyone else turning a blind eye to them. So if the world's turning a blind eye without any hope of a solution, because it's not necessarily up to the national government, and that causes tension and frustration. The local government can't provide solutions. The regional government can't, national can't. Europe is struggling because it's the voices of the people that need to come up and say, we want support, such as what Germany did in 2015, and just raise better awareness. And this is something I agree we need to work together on doing, but, you know, having these discussions. So that's, for me, let's ask to Peter, and then we'll ask the guys to wrap up and then go to Rudy. So.
Excuse me, guys, just in between, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, it's Christos, who would like to say goodbye because he needs to. Are you here, Christos?
Yes,
okay.
I am here.
Okay. He needs to go in very few, so he wanted to say goodbye to us.
Okay, just in conclusion, once again, allow me to thank you all for giving me space to talk. It's been a pleasure. It's been an honor. I really admire your work, and I hope that you will keep up working towards all these very important directions. Um, I just need to finish up. I would like to say that what I sense and what I understand in most of the people is a sense of exhaustion, that everyone seems tired, both refugees that have been living under such conditions for so long, and also local people that have been dealing with unresolved issues for so many years. Uh, so right now, it's like we don't have an option. People that are working in civil society organizations, given the fact that they have been in the public eye and they have been targeted because of their work, um, right now there is no room for fear. Everyone seems to be afraid of what's coming next, because actually we don't have a concrete perception of the future, and that's evident, of course. So what I'd like to say is that we should not fear of the upcoming future. We should be always open, and I would urge you to challenge yourselves to talk with people that you disagree. This is what we need to do: to talk with the people that we disagree and we don't find in the same page. If we are ready to do such a thing, I'm pretty sure that the landscape will change on its own. And sometimes you might think that this is weird, but the solution to a problem is, well, will not come from you. It will be the problem will be resolved on its own. So if we keep working towards, the direction of including refugees into the matters of their own, into the matters that they concern them, if we give them, more accessibility and more visibility, I'm pretty sure that everyone will, get familiar with the image of a person who comes from uh, another place on this earth and stays in here and is able to adjust into the new reality and is able to include himself or herself. So this is an optimistic scenario where everyone can get the idea of living together in an inclusive and in a democratic society. This is very important to preserve this, the right to be different, the right to have different religion background, different identity. Uh, we have to keep talking about these things. We have to keep listening, which is extremely vital, especially the people that feel that they don't have representation. I do understand that lots of local people in Lesvos, in Mytilene, find themselves, as you said, Vasily, it's the 40% of the local population that has changed. That gives, that gives a basis to a xenophobic rhetoric, which we need to understand. If we deal with this like just an appalling situation, I'm pretty sure that we will not solve anything. So thank you once again for giving me space and the opportunity to meet you all and to discuss over something that's important.
Thank you very much for participating, Christo, and all your insights. Really appreciate it and look forward to continuing the discussion. So thank you very much. And I'm sorry that you're not going to be able to join the next panel, Christo, because we've got, well, the whole day actually, some guys with some thoughts on certain suggestions that could have positive impact, and also for Lesvos. So if you can pop in later, it'll be great to have you. Peter, over to you. And then we'll go back to Sonia and then look to wrap for Rudy to take the floor.
Thank you, Vasily, and thank you, Christos, and thank you, Sonia and Douglas, and everyone for their contributions. If the music in the background is too loud, that's because it's Saturday night here. My daughters are dancing in the background, so I can hear them with their mother. So I do apologise. Just following on from what Christos said, I think this is the reason why intercultural dialogue is extremely important. The objective shouldn't be mutual agreement. We're never going to agree. But what comes from when intercultural dialogue is executed in an effective manner, where it's not executed from an ethnocentric perspective, is you have mutual respect. And when you begin to develop mutual respect, you go through the self-discovery process, which then allows you to gradually recognize who the other person is for what they are. So I just wanted to just follow on from that comment. Now, I wanted to just say something in regards to Lesvos, because following on from what you were saying, Douglas, Lesvos has always been a place of, it's been this midway point which people have sort of passed through. And there's a story which I wanted to share with you, going back to 1914, World War I. Australia, New Zealand, the Army Corps, our soldiers, landed in Lesvos. They went to Egypt first for training, and then they went to Lesvos. And they were in Lesvos, they landed in Lesvos 2 weeks before the invasion of Gallipolis. And what happened 2 weeks before, 2 weeks beforehand, was the Ottomans and the Germans basically cleared the whole town of Gallipoli of every single Greek. So they completely just got rid of all of them and said, you have 2 hours to pack whatever you can and leave. And they did that because they were scared that the Greeks would side up with the Australian and the New Zealanders that landed there. And our organisation produced 3 creative shows, and theatre shows, and we told the story of World War I and how the impact of World War I still continues to affect a lot of Australians today. And that lasted for 5 years. So we toured that to over 100 communities across our state, and over 2,000 school performances over the 5-year period. So here in our country, we're very familiar with Lesvos, but we're not familiar with Gallipoli. And there wouldn't be one Australian that would know that Gallipoli was a Greek city, and that the whole, coast, western coast of Turkey was Hellenic for 4,000 years. And then came the Asian Minor catastrophe, and that was the end. And then, of course, the nationalisation of the Ottoman Empire and the major exchange of populations.
Peter, so can I ask you to give a final wrap from a social economy perspective?
Yeah,
just so we
thank you. Sorry, I digressed. What I wanted to say was we must stop thinking of NGOs as being purely just not-for-profit organisations, or maybe representing the government. That the private sector can play an important part here. And one of the stories that I'm hearing coming out of Lesvos, and I have some relatives there, is saying, well, the bottom line has been affected over the last 5 years. 30 to 40% of our businesses have been impacted in a really big way. So how do we grow that social economy and bring them in there to get them to realize that they can have a stake? Because when people see that their livelihoods are being affected, they're going to start to rebel, and they're going to start to influence the masses, which is what's been happening on Lesvos. So I think from a social economy, we need to start to grow that voice, and we need to begin to recognize that we need to create a voice that doesn't go against those pure constructs at the moment. Because at the moment there's this grand dichotomy between the public and the private realms, saying that we can own this space. No, what we're saying now is that the social economy can be a combination of both those, or we can both work together to solve the challenges. Thank you.
And thank you very much for that, Peter. Collaboration, it's our greatest value. Sonia and Douglas, and I must say, I thought I was bracing myself, and it's been an awesome chat, and I'm looking forward to catch up again soon with you guys and continue the discussions and the collaborations. And I actually, if there is time in between, if there's a short video you want to send us that we can play, or something that some positive aspects or whatever you guys may want to share, it will be a pleasure to play it if there is a break, because we're kind of running short for breaks, but would love to showcase some of your work. For now, the other one we can also play with a specific topic that we want to discuss, and I would love to take that. But yeah, if you can wrap up from a social economy perspective,
Sure.
Great, thank you.
And Doug and Sonia, just before, just to let you know that we have one of our viewers who is asking a question for you. So I don't know when you want to respond to it, now or after.
Yeah, you can ask.
It was for Doug. Daphne asked, Doug, have you spoken to the locals about what you mentioned, that they should seek for solutions themselves? What have they said? My view is that they are very skeptical and mistrustful of governments, NGOs, etc., on local and European level.
Well, currently, in the days that led up to the closure of society and the lockdown, we were developing a project called We're More Than This, which gave opportunity for individuals to be able to communicate the realities that go past the stereotypes. And we spent a lot of time talking to business owners, cafe owners, individuals, taxi drivers, just people that are residents or have chosen to relocate to Lesvos. And they spoke their minds, and they spoke openly and freely about what they see are the challenges that we've discussed pretty deeply in different times. And I think that's what Vasily was bracing against. They're thinking like, oh, here we go. We're going to have a healthy debate about the topics. But I think we come from the same place. And a lot of the individuals that were communicating their concerns, they had some sense of like a distrust towards NGOs. I think that does come from a steady diet of media that keeps communicating to them that NGOs should not be trusted. But at their core, every single individual talked about what Vasily said, is that their community has irreparably changed. And what are we supposed to do about it? How can we solve the problems if we're not given an opportunity and supports? And I keep coming back to what we talk with our students about, is that when they're developing an idea for a project or a story, a fiction story, or even one that's rooted in fact, is that your central character will shift from passive to reactive to active. And if you do that successfully in a story, the film will, the media piece will be impactful. And right now, I feel that most of the people on Lesvos are stuck in the reactive phase from all centers of the essential debate. And the only place that they're going to get to become active is in the middle. And that's what we have to do. We have to push for them all to listen to each other, to engage with each other. And as Peter said, they're not going to all agree, but that doesn't mean that there isn't commonality and that there isn't an opportunity for people to work together to create solutions to these problems that impact the larger community. And I think that in social economy, that there are opportunities for this to happen. And I'll let Sonia extend that, but that's what we're fighting for in Lesvos in particular.
Well, I actually had a side note. I'm going to allow myself for this one very briefly. At the beginning of the year, I was in Ghana for a project that refugees as well. And Ghana was presented to us, by the way, as a very successful story when it comes to handling refugee issues. It's not completely a success story, but there are certain things that work there and could actually work on places like Lesvos. A very short thing, a very basic thing that nobody actually thought about when humanitarian organizations started coming to Lesvos, was that local communities, the ones that are living close to refugee camps, are receiving only the negatives from being close to refugees. Which means, yes, there are small crimes, mostly thefts. People are stealing, usually like oranges, but some trees are being destroyed. So yes, there are negative things happening, and locals are seeing only this. When we take the small village of Moria, just next to Moria camp, which everybody knows about, and nobody knows about those villagers, usually older population, we only see problems. We don't see anything positive happening. When in Ghana, for example, in those communities where the government decided to locate refugees, they are getting a percentage to develop their community. Percentage from the humanitarian aid that the refugee camp gets. Even if it's usually very small, 1 to 3%, we're getting it, and they are being asked by the local authorities and UNHCR or other big organization that provides aid there. What would you like? Would you like piping system because they don't have any? Would you like a school facility? And then we're putting those 1% into your account, and we're building this thing. And they're actually profiting from being close to refugees. And this also allows them to a little bit identify and integrate with refugees. It's not this thing that we all know, which is us and they. We are in this together because this humanitarian crisis touches all of us, both positively and negatively, right?
Social economy. Sorry, just one final thought on
Vasily,
you're muted. But one final thought on social engagement, social and entrepreneurial engagement, is that the core of our programming is about young individuals being able to have marketable skills. Now that's universal. We work for marginalized communities. It doesn't matter if that's a European community, a refugee community, an indigenous community. Every single individual should have an access point and the skills necessary to succeed in the modern culture, in the modern economic society. That should create opportunities for there to be individuals from all of these communities in Lesvos to work together on that. So an ideal dream of ours would be, what if young Greeks and old Greeks, locals on the island, and refugees and NGO workers, and all of those people came together and actually created media together, or created music together, or created art together, or created a small business together, or did all of those things, where it is funding that required there to be cultural cohesion, required stakeholders from all of them to be part of to truly come to the middle. And you pitch it out to all of them and say, what are your ideas? And see what comes back to the center. And then we develop those ideas. It can be an incubator of amazing opportunities that benefit everyone. And until, as Sonia said, until they start seeing that there are opportunities for them individually and communally to benefit, they probably will stay in the reactive phase. They won't get into the active aspect of how to move forward from here.
Douglas, all excellent points. And again, the next panel is going to address a lot of those things. So it would be of interest. And if you guys are on board, to comment and insight, because I think it'll be of interest in terms of what the panel is going to be talking. And through the discussions yesterday, there's actually a project that we would like to take forward as well. But I just want to say something that, and it's maybe somewhat controversial in some ways, is that the economy on Lesvos is booming. No one's talking about it. No one is talking about it. But the highlight that I want to make about this is that, and to Sonia's point, this is not about economy. This is not necessarily, money always has an impact. But people are being, on Lesvos, a lot of people feel that their home is not home anymore. So, and saying, how can it be active towards embracing the new home, why must the people accept that? You know, and I completely understand them. And they completely, you know, from their perspective, why must they change their lives, you know, to accommodate others in their home? So we just need to be conscious that it's not an economic thing. And just from a discourse perspective, no one is actually, and it comes to the point, I don't know if it's a cultural thing, but no one wants to say that they're benefiting from someone else's misery. So no one's, you know, this dialogue about, so we're only hearing negative, no positive stories. And because people are not being active in getting involved. So this balance, we need to find the balance, exactly what you're saying. Your ideas are phenomenal. The work is extraordinary. And I really want us to continue these things and see, and then have a dialogue about this specific point they just mentioned, yeah, and the question that I asked you on the thing that will just take too long right now to unpack. So we got to move on to Rudy. But thank you all for an amazing discussion and for all your contributions. It's been awesome, and look forward to continuing them.
Well, thank you very
Thank you.
much. Thank you very much for having us on, and we're happy to engage and into the future, not just today. So thank you very much, and thanks to everyone else who was part of this.
Pleasure.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Arthur, are you
Okay.
Rockstar and Rudy?
Okay, guys. Well, thank you again for talking and your contribution for these panels. All of you just spoke about these matters. Now I will like to introduce Rodi Kimpioka. I will quickly introduce him, and then he will talk about what he's doing more in a personal way and in details. So Rodi Kimpioka is from Democratic Republic of Congo, Kinshasa. He studied computer sciences at his university in Kinshasa. He has been in Greece since June 2017, seeking asylum. He supports various community initiatives and also heads up the RAD Music Project, which he co-founded. This project supports refugees on Lesvos Island in Greece through various activities, and also aims to build bridges between refugees, locals, and volunteers. Rodi recognizes the systemic change required in changing the perception of refugees, and through this project aims to showcase the positive contributions made by refugees in society. Welcome, Rodi, and please, it's for you, your time. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. It is very good opportunity for us to speak about this kind of things. I will not introduce again myself because Artie, he always did it. So I will explain on a few words since when I came in Lesvos, like Europe, and what I saw to the people, and also what I'm doing here when I meet Vasilis, and I will talk for two different way, and the good and the bad also. Like other people, they were saying, we will not take only the negative part, we can also take the good one. Because as we are refugees, I face a lot of things here. So since when I came here in Lesvos, I observed a lot of things to the people. Because when I came, I was not speaking in Greek or English. I was speaking only French, and my mother tongue is Lingala. So when I came here, I was thinking also I can find people we can communicate in a good way. And it was very hard for me to understand what they were saying because they were only speaking English and Greek. So it was very hard moment for us, especially for me. And I was thinking by myself, I think, why the people, what they can, how they get like the name and like refugees. They think refugees is someone, this person is very bad, criminal. That I was making like expecting for the people. I really try and see inside me. I see, okay, how can I become Rudy? How can I show up by myself or show out to let know the people we are not like what they are thinking for us. We are really different person, and also we can bring them also a lot of solution, and we can also contribute to the society. And that's why on that moment, I try first to learn the language by myself with my smartphone, because it was very difficult for me to go to school. The teacher was speaking on French, English, and I learned English by myself with my phone. And after that, I start to be volunteer in one happy family. So I create the cyber cafe computer to help people because inside Mora it was only one printer, and on that time it was more than 7,000 people was there. So you will see if you want to make a copy, you should wait for 3 hours waiting for the line. When I saw that, I said, let me think, what can I do to help these people to have one place to make a copy, to make copy of the document. So I started in one happy family with one computer and one printer. And then I met Vasilis. He's very good guys always. And yeah, we tried to manage a lot of things with him. And he proposed me a lot of things. And it was very hard for me because, you know, when we arrive, we go inside, it kind of like Moria, the life become like dark. You will not understand when you will leave. You will move to the camp. What is the next in your life? What is the future? You will not understand nothing. You don't know for how long they will answer you. You don't know for how long you will get the answer. So I said, let me do some things by myself. Maybe it will be helpful for others. That's why we start with Vasilis to helping people to bring them to the university, to teach them the coding like Scratch, and also for the minor. And also I went to Snipaxi. It was very good to teach every week the minor, more than 25, 30 people every week. For me, it was very good because I was trying to understand the Greek people, how they expecting the refugees name, the meaning name like refugees. I was trying to understand better. I met many fascist people and I met also good people. And I was very care about myself. For the fascist people I saw, they said, we don't like you guys, move our country. I said, yes, I will move. I'm not coming here to stay forever. But where can I go? I don't know. I don't have family. I can integrate in your country if you give me the opportunity to stay here, because I want to stay. I came here for to look for protection. So the good people was very a lot like Vasily and other people like Sinipaxi. And after that, I start to do a lot of things. And also, for me, this discussing issue would be very important for us to speak out for you guys. You are European people to help us. I know not all the refugees we are like criminal, but out there they are. I cannot say all the refugees they are good. But for me, as I was thinking to add something to the refugees, because it's very difficult for them to find a job and to do something if they don't want to learn. That's why I start to give them the course and start to have my music team. And this music team, it will become very bigger because that I realize other people, they will not again go back to university. I really like the idea of Sonia, and they was talking, they're supporting people with like education. But other men or women, they will not go again to university. So we need to help them to try other ways how they can start their life and for the future. You see? So I believe that to connect people together and to bring refugees close to the local people and also to the volunteers, they are coming here to support refugees, to connect all of these people can be very good, we can be more strong, and many of them can get the opportunity to start their own life. That was my goals. And I start to make it like music by myself. and it was very interesting for other people. So to bring refugees to the local to refugees and like volunteer to both of them. So when we are one and we can be strong, and many people will make a change, and many people will like to integrate to the society like Greece. I know it is very difficult for other people living in Sadika, but I'm trying to do my best. I don't want to explain the list of everything I have done here. Maybe when and you will have some question, I will explain about what kind of things I've done here in Greece, in Lesvos for refugees. But because there's a lot. And yeah, so for me, this is my point to add something very good to connect people and to let them to integrate first, to learn Greek and to learn English. Like Israel, he came here, he doesn't speak Greek, he doesn't speak English, and he learned. And I'm with him all the time. We are trying to put music, to play music. And also, I identify the music, it is the best way for me because the music doesn't have language. The music doesn't have the border because it is the music. It is very full of love. That's why I'm trying to do now in Lesvos and to improve it by other things like social activity to help people. Now during this time in coronavirus, it's very hard. It's very difficult for a lot of people. Yeah, so that's like I said, I don't know, guys, if do you have another question, you can ask me because I have a lot of things I don't have to just talking by myself, but I would like you to ask me a question and I will explain you more about that. And the last things I want to say, the life is very hard for us, for all the refugees. It's very dark, but we need to find the solution together with you. We cannot be here just to talk. I am a refugee. I have my own problem. I know people now, they are very angry because there's too many people in the island. It's more than 20,000. It's not good. That is sure. Even also my country, we have a lot of refugees and sometimes we complaining about that. And we can find a solution together with you. Like me, I'm ready to support the society. I'm ready to contribute in the society. I'm ready to help people for the future, how they can start their own life with me and by the way of playing music, to making the band, to making a lot of things, and it will be open mind for other people and also to integrate. Yeah. I don't know, Vasily, if you have a question, you can ask me. Maybe I can talk more about that.
Rudy, the one thing I want to say about you, and it's a short period of time, but you're someone who has gone with a good friend, Stavros Messinis from the Cube. You were working with him, traveling. Rudy went across Greece. So firstly, he was doing every week teaching refugees coding, unaccompanied minors, in partnership with Sinipaxi, the organization that's earlier. But Rudy here went across Greece on a bus, teaching locals and refugees on freelancing. And he even came back to Lesvos to train refugees, and there were also locals representing that he participated in. And he's currently with volunteering also with MSF. And with Sinipaxi, they did this RAD concert, which was beyond RAD. It was exceptional. Peter, I'm going to send you the links. You'll be blown away what these guys put together, Rudy and his team. Really inspiring a group of people. They're doing unbelievable things. So, yeah, Rudy, I think we need to organize some other time again to showcase some of these things. So if you want to say more about any of those, the projects that you did, it was incredible, and very proud of everything you've done. And he's a real community builder, an exceptional human being. And one last point, Rudy, if I may say this, Really, or most refugees didn't have finances. And whilst he was volunteering and helping with coding, he said, I volunteered to do this. So there's no chance I'm going to ask someone to support me financially. And so like the pride that he had in that, in saying, I took this position as a volunteer, I'm sticking as a volunteer. I'm not going to go and ask, despite his hardships, is something that I'll never, many of the things that I'll never forget about Rudy. One of the most exceptional human beings I've been fortunate to meet. So
Yeah.
really,
I want to add also something about the campus bus. Campus bus was very helpful for me because I'm so proud today. Even Greek people, they call me, Woody, thank you, because even when you came, you teach me how to earn money, how to work online. Now today, I'm still working, I'm getting money. So for me, it's making me very proud. I came here and I help the local people and they get a job. And also when they call me, it makes me something very well. And we need this opportunity. Like Stavros, I can say thank you for him because this initiative was very good. When we travel all of Greece and every day teach people, it was not easy, but it was very big sacrifice to support other people to get a job. Like me, I didn't work online because I'm a refugee. I don't have a bank account to get something from out of Greece, but it was very helpful for other that local people they still work until today. That things we need to do for all the refugees inside the camp, not only inside the camp, but everywhere. For the small things can help them to start their own life because it's good for the minor. Maybe they can go to university, to school for their children. But for adults, if we don't help them, what they will do the next time, we will have the criminal inside the camp. Like now, you can understand in the camp, people died. They start people because they don't have something to do. We need to keep them to be busy. If they are busy, they will think a lot. They will not stabbing people and stealing in the night. So that's what I'm trying to fight. First for my community African and to introduce also some people like Afghan, Arabic, and to connect everybody together. Yes.
thank you very much, Rudy. And I hope we'll be able to play one of your videos of your awesome concert that you guys had. Thank you for joining us. Thank you. Arthur, sorry, we're running a bit late for our panel. So, and if there are gaps, we'd like to give everyone a chance again just to catch up and show some things. But Arthur, if you can please kindly introduce our next panel.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you, Rudy, for your speech and opinions. I really enjoyed it. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you.